Well, hello. This is our last week of class, and I'm excited because of all the things that we've been able to discuss and learn this semester. As I look back, it's a wonderful opportunity to be able to be in a situation where we can all learn together and we can all grow together. And I've learned a lot from you this semester, so I appreciate that. So I'll just outline some of the activities for this week, but before that, I want to go back to last week's discussion. And we talked last week about the article that was recently written by myself and educational technology barriers in South Dakota. And I think this is an important area of discussion and information for teachers to understand, as well as anyone who deals with educational technology, that there are barriers and that these barriers can be a real issue for teachers to before they can incorporate technology into the classroom. So just to look at a couple of things that I wanted to talk about with those, one thing that is that time is the biggest barrier. Time is the biggest barrier that is cited by teachers in both surveys. Doesn't matter when you ask, time is going to be their biggest problem. So I think this is why classes like this one that you have gone through are so important, because they give you a foundation so that you can quickly find, adopt, and use technology tools and resources. So notice that during this class you have been given a list of resources, you've been given some instruction on those tools and resources, but you kind of had to take the time to learn those. And by taking the time to learn those tools and resources, you've also gained the ability to do so more quickly next time. And because you have those lists of tools and resources at your disposal, you can share, you'll be able to have the experience of looking at these more quickly, looking back at the list that we provided in our class, remembering the tools that you've had some experience with so that you can more quickly incorporate these into your educational experience. And that's one wonderful thing. Along with this survey that was featured in the article that you read, I was also able to record or to ask teachers who responded to the survey a little bit about the favorite apps, tools, resources, and so forth that they use. And that's what I provided you with in the beginning of the semester, as you had opportunities to choose a tool to present about with your tech talk. And so that is coming straight from current teachers in the field in our state. So it's kind of a cool thing to be able to do that for you. Another thing about the survey, I think a lot of you had really good points about this idea that maybe administrators come to teachers and they expect teachers to be able to implement some technology in the classroom, and that's true. I think that a lot of times teachers are asked to use technology, but there's not really a purpose behind it. There's not really a specific idea of how. They're just expected to do it. And somebody mentioned, I think, the smartboard. Use the smartboard for this lesson. Well, what if it doesn't make sense to use the smartboard for that lesson? What if the smartboard isn't the right tool for that? And so that's what teachers are faced with sometimes. So, of course, as we talk about the barriers too, the barriers of training and technology support are difficult ones, and businesses often have a lot more tech support than does education. So there's just a lot with this article that's a good reminder. So, and good news too, I just got my review back from that article. I submitted that to the Journal of Research on Technology and Education, and it was accepted with revisions. So that means that, which is probably the most positive outcome you can get, where they say, okay, revise this and resubmit it, and we'll probably publish it, is kind of the statement that they gave me. So that's good news because I think it's timely and important, and it'll go out to a wider audience in that way to a pretty good journal. Okay, so just a few class updates then. In D2L, the gradebook does not have all items filled out, and that's just a warning to you. That's because we didn't get to all of the activities and other possible things that we could have done in the class. It usually happens this way in this class. And so not everything in your grade book will be filled out, but I will use your percentage in the grade book to be your final grade. So you can look at the syllabus for the percentages and what the grade they add to. It's basically following the Northern State designated gradebook item. So that's one thing to be cognizant of. So not all the items in the gradebook, when you go to look in your gradebook, not every item will be filled in, but it doesn't count the items that I didn't put a grade in for. So it's still accurate. A little bit more on activities for this week. So obviously this week you're just finishing things up. It's finals week, so you're going to finish up your cooperative communication project. I think everyone's done with your tech talk, so we're good on that. And then, of course, submitting your constructive makerspace assignment, your makerspace reflection. And I've talked about this many times during the semester, but just as a recap, this is when you actually go to or experience a makerspace and you put this reflection on the experience together. So that's the makerspace reflection. Whew, excuse me, sorry about that. It must be spring allergies, right? Spring is here. Okay, so yeah, so you're going to submit your makerspace reflection. That's your reflection on from the time that you actually experienced a makerspace. And for those of you who didn't have a class, I gave you an option to go to another makerspace and review that and reflect upon that. So that's the activity. Those are the activities for this week. You just have to get these things in. And I'm going to go ahead and grade them now. So don't submit them unless they're finished, because I'm going to go ahead and grade them. And then finally, I want to talk about the cooperative communication project in a little bit more depth for this final week, just looking at the rubric and what I'll be looking for here. So each item in the rubric I'll go through. So video or recorded presentation comprises the first three items. The length, that it's within that range, we're good. And if it's even longer than that, that's usually okay too, because that just means you put forth more effort. The recorded presentation presents a skill or concept well. Okay, so does it present this skill or concept well? And that's kind of kind of depends on what you're going to present and what the skill is and whether it could be taught well in this video or not, whether it was taught well in this video or not. And then the next one is the quality of the video or recorded presentation. So again, is this quality video, does it follow some of the things that you read about from my textbook, such as using no vertical video, such as having different shots, and of course the skill concept area might include some of those editing shots as well, but this would also include the quality of the video shows that maybe if there's an important skill you need to show, you have a close-up of that, and then you go back to the medium shot. Is it edited well? That type of thing. So those are some of the things. Hopefully the example videos that I sent to you are good examples of that. Next is the lesson. So that's the video already. So next is the lesson. We're going to see if it has a title and summary. That's pretty easy. Standards and objectives, description of the learners. So describe who are these learners, what grade are they in, what are their ages, that type of thing. List of materials and technologies. And then the list of project-based learning elements. Now in this case, I'm going to look for every one of the 9 project-based learning elements. Anchor, task, directions, student choices, and so forth. And did you describe each one of those in detail? What does the anchor look like for your project? What is the task? What are the student directions? What are the student choices? What's the inquiry? And describe each one of those in detail. If those are all described in detail, then that would have to do with this element of list of project-based learning elements. So it's not just a list, it's describing each in detail. And then the assessment plan. Is that a good assessment plan? Is it aligned with the objectives and the activities for the project plan that you created? So I just wanted to cover that in more detail before the due date so that you wouldn't be surprised by any grading items that I submit. And then last but not least, just wanted to recap on this meaningful learning framework. I think this is just so important as we talk about meaningful learning. We have talked about this early in the semester. You even had to create something early in the semester that showed, what this meaningful learning framework was all about. And as we talk about the different elements, we had active learning, so we had this idea of manipulating something and then observing the effects of this. And you've done this through some projects. You've done an active learning assignment. You've done with the interactive whiteboard. You had students manipulate answers, for instance, and observe those as a classroom response experience. Or in your makerspace experience, you probably saw a lot of this, although constructive was the main area for the makerspace experience. But constructive and active learning, again, always go hand in hand, or often go hand in hand. So active learning. And then we talked about, so here are some example pictures from a previous presentation about active learning. Then we talked about constructive learning, where students are supposed to reflect upon what's going on and articulate what's going on. And often a part of this I often mention is puzzlement too, or this being puzzled by something that's happening around them. And then they have to reflect about what's happening, think about what's going on, and then share that with somebody, articulate that with somebody. So with constructive learning, we had the makerspace experience. You know, we have things that we see, but we don't expect that to happen, so we have to make sense of those experiences and then try to explain what is going on. That's when learning starts. So just moving forward here. So hopefully you saw that evidence of constructive learning, and that was part of the assignment to outline, you know, what constructive learning evidence did you see? How were students really reflecting on what was happening, and how were they articulating and explaining what was happening? And then we have intentional learning. This was the learning where it's reflective and regulatory. In other words, students are able to kind of set their own goals, kind of do learning in their own way, and be able to do that. And that intentional is a part of what you did for your tech talk, because that was intentional for you. You could choose the tool that you wanted to, obviously from a list, but you know, or you could choose something maybe not from the list. Something that would be useful to you, so that gives you some goals. It allows you to be regulating your own type of learning and reflecting upon the tool and how it might be used in an educational situation. Then all come together and share each other's tools, which is nice. So that's the intentional learning. And then another example, or another area of the meaningful learning framework, was authentic. And this came earlier in the semester. You created an authentic learning experience in which you added some technology element to help support the authenticness or authenticity of the learning. And you remember you talked about how this made the learning more complex or more contextualized. So authentic learning then looks at the real world and thinks about how learning could connect better to the world outside of school in these ways. And then finally, cooperative or collaborative conversational learning. In this last assignment, you had the opportunity, if you wanted to work cooperatively or collaboratively, but if not, that's okay. You still learned about cooperative learning and how you might create a project-based learning experience that would be cooperative. And of course, this cooperative learning allows students to work together to somewhat play to their strengths and to share in different ways to contribute toward a final project or final activity or goal or conversation. So this is the meaningful learning framework, and it's, I hope, something that you will be able to take with you in the future and to think about how it can be incorporated with technology. One thing that I often mention in my classes is that the incorporation of technology itself does not necessarily improve learning. It's adding a good educational or teaching method onto the technology that really helps. So you add the technology in, sure, but not just for its own sake. Incorporate technology into learning in a meaningful way, following some of these meaningful learning framework elements. And as you might remember, the meaningful learning framework really comes with these hypotheses or these theories that learning will be more effective and meaningful to students as more of these items are incorporated into the learning process. And it will not be as effective and meaningful if less of these items are incorporated or fewer of these items are incorporated into the learning process. And learning will be more effective and meaningful to students as technologies are used to support more of these items. So again, when you incorporate technology, think about it from a meaningful learning standpoint. Don't just think about when an administrator comes to you and says, you need to use more smartboard, you need to use your smartboard more, or you need to use your iPads more. Instead, hopefully they're thinking about it within some type of framework that has a learning goal in that framework. And the meaningful learning framework is one of these, I think, one of the better models to use for technology use. So that is my parting presentation or my parting thoughts on meaningful learning and technology and for this class. I don't know that I'll record any more videos unless there's a need to correct something um, or to give more announcements and so forth. That would be best formed in the video format. But just wanted to thank you all for your efforts during this class, and those hopefully have led to you learning some important ideas and tools and concepts and theories that will help you to be a more effective teacher with digital technology.